Everyone, I call to order this Appropriations Committee meeting of March 7th, 2024. We have a few folks from the public. Our first agenda item is any public comment? Is any questions or comments? Excellent. Seeing none, we'll get right to the next bit. Approval of the meeting minutes from February 22nd.
Move to approve the minutes of February 22nd.
Second.
And Janice, any discussion on those? All those in favor? We pass unanimously. Excellent. Next item on the agenda, review of Community Preservation Committee project requests. Wow. I know there is a CPC meeting pending, so we'll try to get up to get you up quickly, and then but don't feel rushed.
Thank you very much for having us before you again. I'm John Campbell, Chairman of the Community Preservation Committee,
And
joined
I'm
by Lori Connors.
Laurie Connors, Planning Director.
And our goal tonight is to review what our recommendations were from the rounds of CPA public hearings that we've had. The public hearing is technically still open through tonight when we meet after your meeting here. But we expect all of these decisions to go forward to warrant articles at town meeting. Do they have this handout?
Yes, we do.
Okay, very good. So, in general, we came into this year pretty wealthy in our coffers, if you will, of CPA. There's expected new revenue of another $820,000. That is the expected FY25 tax revenues from the 1.5% surcharge that's been enforced since the CPA started in Northborough in 2005. And we also have $1,340,000 in our reserve accounts, about $1 million of which, a little over, is in the unreserved fund. And as a reminder, that's the fund that is not yet designated to any one of the three core areas, either open space recreation or affordable housing or historic preservation. So that gives us flexibility to use that among any of those core areas or on recreation projects. For the last few years, the committee has been a bit conservative, trying to leave as much as we could in that reserve account for expected things such as White Cliffs, such as downtown revitalization, and something else big that might come along, not wanting to parcel it out on small projects. And as it turned out, we were able to grow that reserve. Well, this year we had something pop up. As you may be aware, the town received notice that a property that was under Chapter 61 tax restriction was presented for sale. The town has the right of first refusal to buy that property. This is the property at 432 Whitney Street. And after review and debate and input from other committees, ultimately the CPC voted unanimously to approve or bring to the town the opportunity to purchase the land using CPA funds and reserves. So the good news is this would be handled without any other town appropriations, no effect on any other town warrants, and in fact we're able to use that unreserved fund pretty much in its entirety, and that's really what pulled it off. The committee was thoughtful in it, knowing that if we use that reserve, we need to build it up again maybe for the next big thing. But on the other hand, the committee thought we should act on what's before us rather than not knowing what might come in the future. We do expect other affordable housing projects. We do expect other historical preservation projects. But the good thing about CPA is we get the new revenue every year. It's really been a great tool for Northborough. And the good thing about this year is that having the reserves allowed us to act on something that came up really quite suddenly in the cycle and had not been applied for or even expected at the time we first started our meetings. So the way we cobbled it together was to use all of the unreserved fund as well as money in the conservation fund, which had been put in there by prior town meeting votes. That had been our mechanism for recommending open space funds from CPA to go to the conservation fund, where it could be used for quick action on parcels, and it's been used multiple times to help preserve many of the open spaces and trails and so on that we use in town. And in this case, we chose to use all of the funds in the conservation fund that were put there by town meeting vote for CPA money. There is still a smaller balance of about 60,000 that I think is prior money or maybe even interest. Jason, does that make sense?
What was that?
In the conservation fund, how there was a,
Yeah, there's the
Small
the
residual
conservation fund has two components to it. It's got the money that was directly transferred from the CPA, which carries the CPA restrictions on it. Then there's the interest income that's been accrued on that money, that the investment income that's built on it, and that has fewer, it doesn't carry those CPA restrictions with it, so the conservation fund can be used for less
Right.
restrictive purposes, if that answers your question.
good, thank you for confirming. So I think there's some 60,000 still remaining. And I'm going to overlap, if you will, with the second page where I'll let you know that there was an application from the Open Space Committee for a request to put an additional $350,000 in the Conservation Fund. The goal of the Open Space Committee has always been, let's try to get $1 million in that fund and keep it going, because when a large parcel occurs, we know it's usually going to cost at least that much. Well, the Open Space Committee, when this came up, agreed we can waive that because we'll put it toward the effort to preserve 432 Whitney. So that's what happened. The CPC passed over that application, but instead chose to use what was in the Conservation Fund, combined with the unreserved fund, and combined with $218,000 of our new incoming FY25 revenue. And that's how we arrive at the $1.7 million acquisition price of this property. So that's the way we'll present it at town meeting. Another component of it that we wanted to work in was the opportunity that a small portion of the property could be used for a housing project, specifically an affordable housing project. And this allows us to check another box of CPA requirements. And while it's undefined as we sit today, the proposal is that it would be a small property, about 4 to 8 units. It would likely occupy a part of the property near the front of the road, if you're familiar with it, while leaving most of the more beautiful property, opportunity for trail, and the connection to existing conservation land intact. Anything further on that?
Yes, we received some good news just before this meeting, late this afternoon, from the Massachusetts Department of Conservation and Recreation. So they are going to contribute $200,000 to this purchase of land, which means that hopefully in our meeting right after this one, the CPC can consider which pot of money will be reduced by $200,000, and it can still remain in revenues or whatever. So, good news.
That's great.
We believe we'll have a commitment strong enough that we would go to town meeting and write the warrant accordingly, or would this be, backfilled or reimbursed, if you will?
I believe it's going to be a strong commitment.
Great.
Even better.
Ka-ching, right, exactly. Very good. So any questions to us on how that all came about and how we're funding it? Yes, Jan?
Not how it all came about, but is that property clear of hazardous waste? It has been, because there was some illegal dumping that occurred there probably 10 years ago.
So it's my understanding that the dumping occurred on the property across the street, not this one. There has been some fill, but it has been determined to be organic. in
Someone
nature.
has looked at it.
Yes, and we have, somebody has just done some soil test pits, so that we can verify that there's no issues, and we haven't received those results yet, but we will be receiving those soon.
Mr. Chair, if I could, just, I know you guys are gonna meet, so can I just ask or recommend, let's go to town meeting with the full amount? Because to accept the grant in the state, I get nervous
Okay.
relative to acceptance, so if you were thinking about reapplying it to another project, for example, if you could just let us get through, get the money back. If we get 200 from them, obviously that 200 would stay with CPC funds. but if you could just hold on to get everything in writing before we make the change to the warrant or to the motion. So I just asked you to do that. And as to your question, I think there were 6 test pits we did last week. We were out there, and today the appraisal was on site today, and I think that's been done. So we're wrapping up all these pieces as we go through. But I don't have the report back from the soil test, but I know we did at least 4 or 6 test pits throughout the property. Sorry, thank you.
Lisa, you have a question?
One question. Is the preservation restriction necessary on that lot, correct?
Yes, if you acquire land, any property actually with CPA, you need a preservation restriction
And is
by
that,
law.
that additional money put into that amount that we're talking about tonight?
As far as the holding of the restriction,
Yes. Isn't there a cost for the restriction?
there's sometimes a cost by the organization that holds it, because the town can't hold it. It needs to be independent. So, for instance, in some cases, Sudbury Valley Trustees has held a restriction, or New England Forestry has held a restriction. And they often donate that as part of the project upon request or negotiation. Isn't there some sense that,
In this case, the Department of Conservation and Recreation has offered to hold the restriction.
And that's in addition to the 200,000, that's amazing. That's great.
yeah, that would be great.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Rest of the projects?
Go to that one? Okay, great. Yeah, now we went to some fun ones, sort of fun ones. We went to town meeting and got pickleball courts approved in town, which are widely used and very popular. But with that comes a bunch of noise. So we had been receiving input from residents who, not being anti-pickleball, but asking, these are, abutters or nearby residents, asking if there would be a way to make it less intrusive to their own privacy and recreation activities outside. So with some research and help from Scott, the DPW director, he's identified a soundproofing, basically like a mesh covering to the inside fence, which really actually looks, it doesn't detract from the courts. It's attractive looking enough, actually just closes them off a little more, and yet it's very effective at soundproofing. So this is a technique used in other communities, and we believe as an enhancement to the recreation facility, it's a good use of CPA money. So that was an easy unanimous vote as well. Good with that one? Great. Next, in the affordable housing category, we approved a request from the Northborough Affordable Housing Corporation for $126,856. The NAHC, as you may know, has been very effective in helping to create more affordable housing units in town. They've been very efficient and effective with the funds coming from CPA. These funds would be subject to the funding agreement that was developed several years ago when the NAHC was created, and has been used each time that funds are granted to the NAHC by the town. And just simply the way it works is those funds are basically held by the town until an approved project needs them. Then they present receipts and the money is transferred. And any money that's not used, each year it needs to be renewed by vote of the CPC as well as the select board. And then if NAHC requests to have that money continue to be renewed, then it's granted. And that's pretty much what they've been doing historically. Their goal is to, again, grow their available resources to about $500,000. They have an opportunity for adding another affordable housing unit along Boundary Street, as well as a couple of other projects in the mill. So it seemed like a very good and very reasonable request. Questions there? No? Very good. You guys are easy. The next project was with regard to the First Parish Church and a request for funds to help repair the steeple and really the structure within the steeple and what supports the bell. They cannot ring the bell safely unless the frame is replaced. It's quite a bit damaged by water intrusion, which had happened over the years, and even another CPA program that added some restoration to the outside. It wasn't enough to keep all the water out, nor fix the old damage. So this project actually came up last year. They really didn't have enough information yet and definition on what needed to be done. They came back this year with a very, very thorough application and data to back it up. And they're also helping with funds from the church organization as well, and trying to get grants to augment the whole effort. So we're a partner in this, and I think anything you can do to maintain that building is important to the town. It's still an iconic piece of our town history as well as our town image. Yes, sir.
Yeah, wasn't a few years ago that we paid for a staircase for them? Or was that a different church, Unitarian maybe? Or-
Accessibility, I think. It was an accessibility.
Correct. Different project, and it was.
Oh, it was a different project?
Quite a number of
Okay.
years ago.
Okay.
It involved an accessible access,
Oh, okay.
which is.
So what's this church? Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a unique subset of CPA where we weren't restoring anything about the building historically. But
Oh, that was
by-
an access
by,
ramp. Okay.
Creating an accessible entry to an historic property is an allowed use. So
Okay.
we did that there. We also did it at the Historic Society building.
Okay.
Another separate.
So this one's, okay, so I was reading replacing wood stairs, I was thinking it was this, okay.
There was a lot of public pushback, though, for that accessibility, as I recall.
This program.
For the accessibility, for the last project, right, was that the last one that was done? And I was curious as to what the response is when pushed on why this church, why this why this, why is the town using any taxpayer dollars at all for what is a church? I mean,
Well, the answer that I think you're looking for, and I don't recall any pushback on the prior program. I may just have washed it out, but I don't remember. That was quite a number of
it
cycles
was
ago.
a while ago, yeah.
But to answer the question that I think you're getting at is, if the facility is deemed to have enough public impact and public use for a variety of things, not just religious activities, then it's an allowed use, and there's precedent in other communities with that respect. There have been some pushback and even some court cases regarding using CPA or taxpayer money specifically in something that benefited a religious activity or a specific religion. So that's the muddy area. But everything that we deemed in this project, we believed it to be allowable. There's been no other pushback that I know of to allow me to go through.
Actually, you're right, I do remember that vote, and there was a lot of people that did not vote for it, but it still passed, but
Right, it did,
I
yeah.
did. There was a lot of pushback.
What do you think it had to do with, at that time? Just something about,
From what I recall is because we're using essentially what is public money
yeah,
or to benefit a church. And I think the argument that was put forward was that, but there are many community open to the public activities that are not
yes,
affiliated with the congregation.
right.
And so you had to provide access for people to get there. And I guess it would be, what you're saying here is that this is to preserve the historic building itself, the steeple.
Sure.
It's not, you don't have church services up in the steeple. It's more because it's deteriorated and it's unsafe and it's,
Exactly.
so.
And one of our criteria for historic restoration projects in the first place, by law and also by our own policy, is that the town's historic commission in this case, has to deem that building as being, among your most valuable or your most treasured properties in town. It has to qualify by age, even though it's not the original church, if it still qualifies by age. And then I think you're touching on the other justifications, which is that property, hosts a lot of activities, outdoor concerts, outdoor activity. The adjacent building has all kinds of dances and community groups and, multiple religious affiliations at different times. But it's really community groups, right? Boy Scouts and so on over the years. So, I think it's a recognized and important property to the town. So I expect the town would support it again. I certainly hope so. You want to hear the bell ring, right?
My son would, anyway.
Any other questions on that one? Thank you. Next, we agreed to fund a small project in $4,729 for an historic marker at the Wachusett Aqueduct. This is an enhancement to the preservation of the historic nature of the aqueduct. We're actually replacing a marker that's no longer there, apparently stolen, but the committee agreed it was still an appropriate use of funds and not very expensive to put back what should be there. I think when you see those markers in town at other properties, it's really very informational to read about what happened at a certain part of town. You might not know about.
You said someone stole it?
Apparently it's,
Huh?
you know,
Oh,
it's a pretty heavy sign and it's gone.
yeah, I would think it's heavy, yeah. Okay, someone really wanted it.
Yet that I know.
Okay.
Thank you. So lastly, by law, the CPC can take up to 5% of incoming revenue and use it for the administrative account. And that account is really for the business of the committee to, pay for staff help, pay the dues to the Community Preservation Coalition, pay for appraisals on things that apply to a project that's come in, things like that. If we don't use the funds in a given year, they go back into the unreserved account. So they're not unspent, they're not wasted, they stay as CPA money. So we usually go every year for the, I apologize, I'll jump back. We usually go every year for the full 5% just to make sure we have that resource. I jumped over the article that's very important. It's the next bond payment on White Cliffs, the 7th out of 10, I think. And this will be for $164,000. And again, the committee approved that. We really have to keep funding that, otherwise you got to pay for it some other way. And then lastly, on the memo, as I mentioned before, there was an application for Conservation Fund money, but the Open Space Committee agreed that we'll waive that request in favor of paying for the 432 Whitney open space property.
Thank you, John. Well done. Any-
So you're not spending that $350,000?
Correct.
Okay.
Because we don't have it anymore,
Okay.
so to speak.
Any other questions on the CPC projects? Well done.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you.
See you at town meeting.
Then we have Lori next on the planning department budget. See you soon.
Hi, all. So my budget is pretty simple. The difference between this year's budget and last year's budget is $12,050 or 3.7%. So my budget includes the planning board budget, the conservation commission budget, earth removal, as well as the ZBA. So it's pretty much, just a standard of living increases. So the vast majority of the budget increase is associated with salaries. So that, of course, was negotiated with the unions. So other than that, there are slight increases to take into account, increases in advertising expenses, just supplies and the like. So there really isn't any significant changes in here, but I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
And Lori, any highlights you want to hit from the accomplishments from the year?
Sure. Probably the most significant project that I've been working on with the Master Plan Implementation Committee is the Downtown Revitalization Project. So as you may recall, there was $150,000 appropriated at town meeting for that purpose. We came in slightly under budget at $148,000. We hired a consultant team that was led by Weston and Sampson Engineers, and that endeavor was completed in January of this year. And there was a final presentation that was given to a joint meeting of the Select Board and the Master Plan Implementation Committee at that time. So that same night, I gave a presentation on my ideas for an implementation project. So it's a streetscape project that focuses on Blake Street and a portion of Pierce Street, pretty much from the intersection with Blake Street to the War Memorial Park, mostly the parking lot. So this project would be largely sidewalk improvements, drainage improvements. Currently, there is no drainage on the roadway or within the municipal parking lot. There would be aesthetic improvements made to the little pocket park. The municipal parking lot would be repaved and reconfigured. Interested in reaching out to the private property owners that own the Fatouche restaurant, as well as the doggy daycare, to see if they would be interested in partnering with us, possibly reconfiguring their parking lots so that we can have increased efficiency, as well as improved aesthetics of the area. The sidewalk improvements would include more street trees. It would include possibly on-street parking. We're going to have to look at that. Bump outs to kind of deal with the stormwater issues, as well as improving the aesthetics. So I did ask the select board if they would be interested in funding the design for $250,000, and they agreed to do so. So, of course, as you know, the town hall feasibility study is underway, and one of the proposals is to move the town hall to Blake Street and do a large addition, which would impact this project. So I have not yet released the RFP because I'm waiting to see what happens with the town hall feasibility study. Chances are we can still do something to improve the streetscape regardless of that project. But obviously, if the town hall is going to move there, then the scope of work would be affected. So that's kind of the state of that project. Dog Park is another project that I've been working on over the course of the last year with the DPW director. We are at beyond the 11th hour on the design. The Stanton Foundation, we applied for grant funds to help pay for the construction. We have requested $250,000. And with that, they are able to make suggestions on the design. So we are working through their final suggestions at this point, and then hoping to get a check in the mail within the next few weeks. And once we have a check in hand, we will be ready to go out to bid. So that's pretty exciting, and hoping that there will actually be a dog park that people can enjoy by the end of this year. So anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I do. What is the time frame of that town hall feasibility study? I mean, when are they going to have it done?
So I understand that a decision, oops, Tim's gone.
Conveniently.
I understand that there are supposed to be some decisions made on the 4 properties within the next week.
Oh, excellent, okay.
And so we will all learn together
Okay.
what the plan is and whether they're going to be. Do you know when the decision's going to be made on the town hall feasibility, which property to go with?
Or more importantly, which one we're not going with?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I stepped out. The 27th is the date that the committee's going to vote on what their recommendation would be to the select.
March 27th.
March 27th.
Okay, so a few more weeks.
So I'll be releasing the RFP at some point after that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Any questions on the budget or
Yeah, just one quick one. What is CMRPC again? What is that?
Central Mass Regional Planning Commission. So the state is carved into regions, and each community has representation in this regional planning commission. So they provide us with technical assistance, particularly having to do with transportation planning, but also land use. They did our open space and recreation plans. So they do regional planning, but they also work as a consultant, so we can hire them to do various planning.
Okay, so that's what that budget's for, is for them to do the assessments.
Yes, so every single year, they assess communities a certain minimal fee, and that minimal fee pays for essentially their regional activities.
Okay.
And then if we want to hire them to do our open space plan, that's extra.
Okay, thank you.
Lori, one more quick question. In some other meetings, the question about the projects that were listed as potential complete streets. I just wanted to check with you, that presentation and the list of recommended projects, is that presentation available off the planning department site?
I believe, so if you look at the planning department page, there is a page for complete streets. So on that page, you'll find the policy and you'll find the prioritization plan. And you'll see that Blake and Pierce Street are within the top 2 projects. So we are going in order. The grant funds that come with the Complete Streets program are very small. It's $500,000 for a 4-year period of time. I anticipate using all of that $500,000 on the Blake Pierce Street project. So there won't be any other grant money
goes to
for 4
construction,
years. Right. Yeah, so it's $250,000 for design approximately, but I anticipate the construction cost will be more in the neighborhood of $2.5 million. It's very, very expensive to do sidewalk projects, unfortunately. And it's a grant program that requires projects to be shovel-ready, so they must be fully designed in order to be applicable.
All right. I think
All
you're
right.
good to go.
Thank you very much.
We almost got you in time for the meeting. And so I just wanted to apologize. So I didn't introduce Jeff. Jeff is the newest member of the Appropriations Committee in trying to get Mr. Campbell and Ms. Connors to their 7:30 meeting. I rushed into things tonight, but just Jeff Knight, welcome to Appropriations. Glad to have you aboard. Thank you. All right. Next up, MIS, GIS, Mr. Kane.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity. For those who don't know me, my name is David Kane. I'm the MIS GIS Director for the town. We're a 2-person department who is responsible for the use of technology throughout most departments in the town, or just about all departments. There's a few that we're not responsible for, but it includes the kind of things that you'd expect: computers, servers, etc. It also includes things like the town's website, our email systems, all the applications that are in use in various departments, like Munis, for example, or permitting systems, public safety applications, so forth and so on. We have, it also includes networking together all of the town facilities. So the town has, town owns fiber that runs along Main Street, connects the fire station, the library, town hall, the highway barn, and the police station. And then we have other sites like the senior center, for example, or the water barn that are connected through VPNs. It also includes, increasingly so, the use of mobile technology. So the officers in cruisers or in ambulances, the technology that's in use there. And then more and more so since the pandemic, staff who are remote if needed now have that ability. And so it includes things like that. In recent years, it's brought about an increased focus on cybersecurity, as you'd expect. I'm going to give you just a little bit of a quick background on what we do, and I want to encourage you to ask questions at any point along the way. I don't want to get too geeky, but I'm happy to answer any questions or dive into anything either here or offline if you'd like. As I mentioned, we have this piece of fiber that runs about just over a mile between all of these sites. We have approximately 25 servers that are in use throughout the town. Again, they host everything like Munis or the CAMA system that our assessors use, public safety systems, things like that. We are moving more and more of these systems to the cloud, so our number of servers are actually decreasing. We have approximately 160 users across all of these sites. It also, that's like full and part-time staff. It includes all of our elected officials and also some volunteers, if you will, for those that are using our systems that might involve sensitive data or things like that. And I can touch upon that in a little bit. We have roughly 225 end-user devices. So that's more than the number of users, right? But a lot of our users actually have multiple devices. At the start of the pandemic, we issued laptops to a lot of people so that they could be remote. That was done rather quickly and with whatever was available on the market at that time. As we move forward, many of those don't get replaced, and we're actually putting systems in now that will consolidate many of those. So we're reducing the number of systems there as well. A few years ago, we used to have phone systems that were different in every building you'd go to. So the library had something from, I want to say, Avaya. Town Hall had a Verizon solution. Police department had a ShoreTel system, so forth and so on. None of them spoke to each other. We now have an IP-based phone system, all the same throughout, and all of the features that you would expect from such a system. But more importantly, it allows folks who might be working somewhere other than their desk to receive a phone call from the public, and they could be at home if there's a snow day or what have you, and it's no different than if they were here. So some significant benefits achieved there. And that's pretty noteworthy. We have new switches that bring together all of those sites. And again, more and more mobile use of technology, whether it be for public safety or, for example, building inspectors going out with a tablet now to do a permit inspection. And those systems for the permitting system are in the cloud, so they walk out there with an iPad, they can take a photograph of a trench maybe that they have to inspect, and they don't have to enter all that when they get back to Town Hall. In recent years, we've focused on, we've done a number of strategic plans for IT, for GIS. We received a community compact grant a number of years ago to fund that, and also we were the recipient of a Homeland Security grant and did a cybersecurity assessment along with the town of Westboro. And so much of what's been our focus in recent years, last year and in this year, are tied back to recommendations from those studies. Worth noting, in the FY25 budget, we're doing things a little differently this year. In past years, we had distributed expenses amongst various departments, mostly police and fire and MIS. Some expenses were split between those three. This year, we're consolidating those expenses all within the MIS department. That shows you a little bit better, it gives you better insight into what those true expenses are. but it does result in a rather significant increase in what's before you today. So there's roughly a $125,000 increase, but there's a corresponding decrease of $75,000 roughly in the police department budget, and $37,500 that would have been in the fire budget are now in this budget. I want to point that out because it's a significant increase here. There's a corresponding decrease elsewhere. Some of those studies that I just alluded to made some recommendations, and so things in our current fiscal year, in FY24, and in next fiscal year, include things like server upgrades, significant backlog of projects from the pandemic times, but we're also increasing some disaster recovery solutions that we're putting in place. We're changing some of our Microsoft 365 licensing to allow for better management of all these remote devices now. And we're bolstering our cybersecurity efforts. So we're putting multi-factor authentication in place. We're increasing the use of encryption. And most recently, we've added what's called a SOC, a Security Operations Center, which in real time will look at traffic coming in and out of the town systems and identify anomalies. An example might be if, well, recently we had an elected official who traveled out of the country and checked her email, and that triggered a flag because, hey, we got somebody in another continent trying to log into an account that normally wouldn't be that way, right? So it's a good thing because it would prevent somebody hacking into whatever system might be trying to be accessed. So that's an example of some of the things that we've added and are adding in FY24 and 25. We continue to seek grant funds. It's an important part of being able to do some of the things that are recommended. Actually, tomorrow there's a deadline for grant submittal. We're going to be applying for funds to move our domain, our email addresses and so forth to a .gov domain, which brings with it some additional security and so forth. Also another recommendation of some of these strategic plans was to develop disaster recovery plans and business continuity plans. And so that's also an example of what we'll be submitting applications for. I don't know if you'd like me to go through specific line items and share with you details, or if you have any questions that I can answer.
I have a quick question. Sure. You have a line item for a new information systems technician, but no
Yeah,
application.
it was proposed, but we have a lot of needs, and that was one that was felt that was, needed to be put on the back burner for.
Okay.
What's Munis?
Munis is the town's financial application.
Okay.
It handles tax bills, utility bills, financials. Jason lives, eats, and breathes Munis.
He's not looking at my computer screen right now. Just kidding.
Utility bills, all the stuff that you have in front of you regarding the budget,
Okay.
all developed within
I was
Munis.
just curious. Thank you.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going through, the big jump in computer maintenance, which you did mention, included a decrease in police and fire. But in reading through some of the explanations, it looked like equipment replacements.
Yes.
Wouldn't that be capital?
No, it doesn't meet our definition of capital.
What's the definition of capital?
Help me out here, Jason. Is it $25,000?
Yeah, well, typically it's $25,000 in a lifespan of 5 years
5
or
years.
more.
Okay.
People handle that many different ways. I mean, we've got plenty of capital requests that meet the requirements, so we would either pay for it out of the levy in the budget. We could consolidate them. Some people will do that. They'll consolidate, 100 computers at, $250 to make a capital project out of it. But that's just typically not how it's been handled here. We're on a recurring replacement.
Right, so we're on a rotating cycle now where generally it's a 4-year lifespan. It varies depending on the specific use. And we have now a fixed amount every year that we have a life cycle for.
Right. I was just, one of them was a server, and, you know, I understand desktops being below.
Sure.
But the servers tend to run quite a bit more, so I was just thinking, I was wondering why that was, just struck me as that should be capital, but.
Right. We actually only have five physical servers, and everything else is virtualized now. We have 6, but we're only replacing 5. For example, our senior center, we're moving entirely to the cloud.
Okay.
So we're not even replacing the physical devices there. So there are some things that are bigger expenses if we get into like extending fiber to, I don't know, perhaps a new fire station or replacing more expensive equipment that would meet that definition. That's when I think you'll see it
Okay.
that way. And for example, an aerial photography project for the GIS, it's more expensive. It has a 10-year lifespan, and that's where that comes in.
Okay.
So the managed services, I believe, well, the notes indicate that this is a pretty large jump, that it's due to the consolidation, right? But from 23 to 24, it was about a 40% jump. So how much of this jump is because of consolidation versus whatever it is that you were doing?
Good question. And it's both, actually. So we're doing two things that are directly attributable to that increase. One is we're consolidating, right? So it's all there. But we've also increased the use of a managed service provider. So that SOC, for example, that I just referred to, that's a new thing and is, I don't know the specific amount for that, but I want to say it was a $20,000 piece. And so that is an increase over what was in place, like in FY23, for example. Again, also increasing our Microsoft 365 licensing to a level that allows us to better manage remote devices, to better secure them. Somebody loses a device, we can wipe it, for example. So things like that are contributing to it as well. Yeah, we're outsourcing some help desk functions because we're not adding personnel. So those are increases in cost, and that would have been an increase in fire, police, and MIS, but now it's all coming together. So it's, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Any other questions I can answer?
You mentioned as a GIS improvement, a larger project like a flyover, and I see it on the capital plan. Any other like fun GIS features, functions
Oh, I
we
could
can
talk
expect?
all night about that.
Yeah.
We've focused, so again, one of the strategic plans we did was a GIS strategic plan, and we've focused on, how do I put this, integrating GIS into many of the day-to-day functions of our applications, so that people don't need to be skilled in GIS stuff. An example, in our permitting system, in the building department, they now have automated systems when somebody's submitting an application that will tell them right off the bat if an application falls within a wetland buffer. Okay. You know, it's generating a buffer around known wetlands and saying, hey, this application is within, I don't know, I think it's 100 feet. So that's an example. A lot of the public safety applications have the ability to hook into GIS so you can see spatial patterns of whether it's motor vehicle accidents or other activity that they're following. We can eventually look at things like sidewalks or, you know, other things like that. There's been discussion of looking at impervious surface areas, and so there's a ton of ways that I'd love to further extend our use of GIS. It's a work in progress, and we're getting there. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Lisa, you had a question?
Just to, the grant that you're seeking, that's supposed to come tomorrow, where's the funding source, and what was the?
The application is going, so we haven't been awarded anything, but it's the state. And the state is really pushing municipalities to, to improve their cybersecurity posture through a number of ways. I think there are 5 or 6 different types types of cybersecurity projects that they want to see towns put in place. Some of them we've already got in place, and we've done it, for example, encryption and multi-factor authentication. So they're funding that for a lot of municipalities. We're going to be seeking funds for disaster recovery on this continuity plan.
And do they have a limit or?
$100,000 per community.
For you?
No, it's a one-time, and that's the limit you can apply for. No one's saying they're going to give that amount to every community. It could be, $10,000 or whatever, depending on what it is you're requesting.
Okay. And the second question, we have a big flood down at the sewer center. Are we ordering computers here to replace, or how are those computers? I imagine
No
we got
computers
wet.
were
Oh,
impacted.
they weren't?
We got some fun things coming. We got a new website. I don't have dates yet, or just want to tease it maybe, let you know that, we use a company called Civic Plus. It's throughout the Commonwealth. They probably have 80% of municipalities throughout Massachusetts, and they're migrating every single one of them to a new version, but it's going to allow us to do some pretty cool new things. We don't yet have dates for it, but it is just over the horizon. Something to keep in the back of your head and maybe ask me about next year. I'm happy to entertain questions later offline if anyone wants to reach out. Happy to discuss any of this in greater detail.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I could, just with that grant, that is, in full disclosure, Julie Ann sent it to me, and I sent it to him, so, just so you know that
Thank you.
it takes a lot of people
It does.
to make sure we cover, all the holes in the dam with our fingers. So anybody that can get us information that's valuable, we'll act on, so that's, I think it came from you. You look shocked, but I think you sent it to me from some of the state delegation.
Yes, that's right.
So I forwarded it on to David, so we'll make an application. So I just want to close the loop for you all, so you can kind of see, you see all this stuff, but we're actually doing work to make sure we can lower the impact to the taxpayer too, so I just.
And actually, a good example is as we're all involved with networked into different groups, and we hear information, keep our ears open for grant opportunities and make sure that they are funneled in.
Indeed, yeah.
Excellent. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Darren. Next up, Finance Office, undistributed expenses.
All right, well, would you like me to move over to?
You're good. I think you're good. You still got a good
You're good
camera
there.
angle from there, so you're
Yeah, I'll go from here.
I don't know if you might need to adjust your microphone. Might be worth it.
There, I think I'm 8 inches away now. Thanks, I'm Jason Little, I'm the finance director for the town. So the finance department is comprised of a treasurer collectors division, an accounting division, and an tax assessors division. I'm also the town accountant in my role as finance director. So the treasurer collector's office, that's the first in your packet tonight. I'll start talking about them. They have a proposed 7.32% increase in their budget over the prior year. That amounts to $28,000. That's made up of just COLA increases and existing staff increasing. There's 4 FTEs in this office, the treasurer collector and assistant treasurer collector and 2 financial assistants in the office. The most significant increase within this budget is the implementation of a time and attendance system for payroll. The treasurer collector's office processes payroll and does benefit administration, and that was an initiative brought forward for the next year. And if we have the funds available, we may implement it sooner than the beginning of next year. But The purpose is to allow department heads to input payroll remotely, so we're not relying on paper submissions. And then, in addition to that, another component of it is employee self-service, or something called like employee self-service. It's called, I think it's called Employee Forward through the vendor we would likely work with, Harper's Payroll. And that would allow employees to get their W-2 remotely online and file tax changes for their withholding taxes online and get their check stubs online instead of us printing checks and mailing them. During the prior to the pandemic, we used to get a number of pay stubs and paychecks delivered to the treasurer collector's office, and then a representative from each department would come every Thursday to come pick up the checks and then bring them back to their departments. And after the pandemic, we weren't seeing people face to face, and we implemented a plan to mail all the check stubs and checks. And the annual cost for all that is about $2,000 for the postage, but in our mind, I think across all the departments, there is more than $2,000 of payroll saved by doing that. But this time and attendance system will likely undermine the need to have people mail checks or get physical checks anymore. So again, the cost, the net cost of that, the postage for the checks has been reduced. It's about $2,000. So the net increase is reflected here. It's about $12,000. And again, we feel that it's probably going to be a benefit across multiple departments that this gets added to the treasurer collector's office. Another thing, I don't do a good job marketing the department. We do a great job. The collector's office is responsible for tax collections, and we typically have a 98, 99% collection rate, and that's a testament to how well and how professional the treasurer collectors are in the office. And George, do you have a question?
Your time and attendance,
Yes.
what's the scope? Do you handle time and attendance just for town offices or for the school?
We have, okay, taking a step back, we have kind of a unique payroll arrangement with the schools, and it's kind of unique to Northborough too, that I don't think many people do their payroll this way. Usually there's one integrated system across all of the departments. Within Northborough, the school department produces their own payroll in-house using their own software to do payroll. They have a more robust payroll system than we do through their software. They have position controls and things like that. As you probably know, they're the biggest department in the town's budget, and they have the most number of people in their department, so keeping track of their budget their payroll budget is extremely important to them. So that's why they have the added, screens and controls there for that. So them having a separate system leads us to need to put together payroll from two systems to produce a payroll warrant bi-weekly. So not the end of the world. We've been doing it for a long time. So generally at the end of the year, we have W-2s that are produced from two different systems, and this time and attendance isn't going to change any of that, but it's just one of the unique characteristics here. So I'm going off on a tangent based on what you asked, but
I was just wondering, well, in that case, would there be an opportunity for consolidation? In other words, could you use the same system that school is using and then just have one system across all?
Well, I mean, it would be nice, but it's not likely because their system's tied into their accounting system. So it's just a module within their accounting system. That, David brought up Munis. We use Munis over here. They use a product called Infinite Visions, and they're both the same parent company, Tyler Technologies now, but they are different systems. So for them to use their position controls and things like that, they would have to continue using their accounting software. So that's typically why school departments will sometimes do their own in-house payroll, want to do that. Okay, so like I said, I was just trying to herald what a good job the Treasurer Collector's Office does. They handle the benefits administration. I think at some point we'll get to talking about the OPEB liability that we have, and one thing that happened in the past year was the plan that most of the seniors were on was called Tufts Complement, and we were notified mid-year that they weren't going to renew us, and the majority of the town senior retirees were on that senior plan. It was also the most expensive plan for the town, and the collector's office, who handles benefit administration and retiree benefits, worked and transitioned them all to another one of the town's existing plans. And there were very few problems with that, and it ended up within the health, this isn't part of the finance budget, but within the health insurance budget, saved about $300,000 that year. And you know, as far as we can tell, it's been widely successful, and the question was, why didn't we push them to do that before? But it was truly because of beyond our control that that plan left the market. So that was, at the same time, when we get to it, I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit, but our OPEB liability dropped by about $12 million as a result of that. So our new OPEB number would have been about 45 million, and it dropped to 32. So that's an incredible savings over the lifespan of the plan as a result of that. But anyway, I wanted to give the credit to the collector's office for having worked directly and with all of the seniors, the retirees, to move them.
Reached out to
transition
each
plans.
individually,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. And I think I covered everything with that budget. If there's any more questions, I can answer them as we go along, or I'll just move on to the next division within finance, which is
Our treasurer's collector.
All right, well, that concludes the treasurer collector's presentation. We'll move on to the assessors. Their budgets, again, it's a department of 3 FTEs. There's a principal assessor, a data collector, and an administrative assistant within the department. The budget's going up to $29,000 or 9.72%. And the majority of that's related to 2 things. One is adding just general wage increases, which are approximately 3% or $8,000, or $7,000, I should say. The largest increases are related to increased consulting. FY26 is a reval year. They are need some additional money for appraisals, and the other amount is $5,000 related to their CAMA, computer-aided mass appraisal software. CAMA is what they call it. There's an upgrade that they need to do for that software, and that's about $5,000. Again, not very good at marketing, but this is our.
I'm sorry, is that a one-time?
Yes,
cost
that's a
for the
one-time
upgrade?
cost, correct. The assessor, I'll just give him credit for this. He's done a great job managing. His values have held up. We've gone through a number of ATB cases, and that's the ATB is the appellate tax board. That's the remedy that a taxpayer would have should they apply for an abatement. The assessors deny the abatement. The ability for the taxpayer is then take that to the ATB, the appellate tax board, to plead their case and show their data. And whenever something's progressed to that state, Lee's values have held up. So I want to give him credit for that, as well as the process every year. We talked about the reval process, and that's a process whereby the state certifies our values, They come in and they look hard every 5 years at our, the values we have and our property record cards, which are available online for everybody's properties, and so for administering fair tax administration. Lee's values were the first in the state to be certified. He got his paperwork in early, and they were happy with his work, and this past year. So again, that was, something to give him credit for. He's the first one in the state to get his value certified. The other thing that the assessors do is they administer the exemption programs. So we raise money for what's called overlay within the budget, and that's a percentage of the tax levy. We've typically run that to be very lean, and it's usually less than 0.5% of the tax levy that's carried in this overlay account. And from the overlay account and off the top, all of the exemptions are funded from the overlay account. So they administer all the applications, and they work very closely with the seniors and basically make sure that if somebody got an exemption the prior year and they hadn't applied in the new year, they will reach out to them and make sure that none of the benefits are missed and people are getting the exemptions that they're entitled to. In the past year, they have implemented changes with the senior work-off program. We have more people seniors working in the senior work-off program. It's administered jointly through the senior center, but the assessors are required to be involved in that, and they apply that to people's tax bills. And then the other thing was we've had some increased interest in the tax deferral program this past year. We went forward and lowered the interest rate that seniors can defer their taxes, and increased the income threshold, so that the assessors were involved with making recommendations in that regard. Unless there's any questions, I think I covered everything.
Did we see more people take advantage of that program?
I think it was a program that we've always had a caseload of between 0 and 1 for taking advantage of that, but I think it may have increased to 2.
Okay.
It's a double.
Every little bit helps, exactly. And lastly, I'll move on to the accounting division.
Geez, I just see it.
Unless you have a question.
I see a little thing, it looks like there's a stale document title in a file properties. See the FY
2021. Yeah, it's clearly not 2021, but.
hiding in the background there.
Yeah, like I said, some of our finished, our process this year, less than ideal. We're putting together information in a period of weeks when it typically in a regular year it would play out over months. So you're seeing the bare details. These are not the finished documents that were from a GFOA award-winning budget. These are the behind-the-scenes documents. So we're putting them forward. We want everybody to have all the details and see everything, be transparent with everything. So there's no questions, but again, that's a function of.
Actually, that's just proof of the transparency right there.
Correct, yeah.
The small typo.
Correct. And if that's the worst one, then I'm going to be pretty relieved. Okay, so lastly is the accounting division, and I'm the finance director, so I supervise the 3 divisions, but I'm also the town accountant. So the biggest increase here you'll see is in salaries. They're going up based on COLAs and other things, but we're also proposing a new position. There's been some talk, and I don't have a formal study to fall back on, but I believe when the former town administrator, before Tim was hired, the former permanent town administrator, John Kader, left, he was making recommendations to appoint a town accountant and segregate the 2 positions. so that we could advance this administration. So that's what's proposed there, is a town accountant's position in addition to my position. So that's the sizable increase there. And the position comes from where it was classified in our class comp study. It's simply the middle of the range that's been added here. Maybe less, maybe more, and it may be difficult to find somebody in addition to that. So the reasons behind needing a separate town accountant and having a good bench to work with is that, I don't know how many people know this, but there's a crisis in municipal workers, and finding qualified municipal workers. When Baker and Polito came into office some years ago, they formed what was called the Workforce Skills Gap Task Force. And people from the statewide associations came together because they saw the signs that there were quite a few people that almost everybody in the career were on the verge of retirement. And they're calling it the silver tsunami, and there just wasn't a bench behind municipal workers to get anybody to come in. And we're seeing that across the state when postings go out, there'll be not poorly paid jobs posted, and there'll be no applicants. So it's somewhat of a crisis. So we've done a pretty good job here of recognizing that and trying to identify staff to promote and move forward. I have a great assistant town accountant now, but we are really just doing a lot of the day-to-day all the time, and for me to spend more time on budgets and the demands of a manager's office is it's unsustainable, the road that we're on with this. So again, we've added this position to the budget. Hopefully it will make its way through to the end, but will it be likely that we could find somebody immediately? That's going to be a challenging question as well. So the outcome of the Workforce Skills Gap Task Force was recommendations. The state has begun working with community colleges to identify people and put them into somewhat of an internship program. I think it's a little too little, too late, because in a few years we may have 20 people that are qualified to take entry-level jobs in town. So it doesn't quite solve the problem, but hopefully it's problem identification, but hopefully we'll be able to develop people in-house and continue on. I'm not retiring tomorrow, but we need to start thinking about succession planning in some of these departments. Other than that, there's no other increases beyond just the staffing in accounting. I will point out overall the three divisions, they make up 1.34% of the town's general fund budget. And 3.82% of the town's share of that budget.
Mr. Chairman, can I jump in for a moment?
Absolutely.
I'm grateful that Jason came back to us from another neighboring community. But just starting with the treasurer collector's office and borrowing money and having that team in a bond rating situation is critical to make sure you save as much as you can in interest. So having that team there is critical. The time and attendance system, there's just simple things like just tracking benefits for comp time, sick time, vacation leave, but making that request electronically to the supervisor or even staff to me in an email format where I can log in, see what's available, and approve in real time. That's a huge benefit that we discussed, that Jason brought forward, that Lisa brought forward. So that department is obviously critical with the amount of payroll that they have to process. Inside the assessor's office, there's over 6,000 parcels that they have to kind of manage and $4.4 billion worth of assets. Just to give you a scale for 3 people managing that, it's kind of a big deal. And Jason holds it together, but having that succession plan in his department is gonna be critical, because there's everything from contract management to health insurance benefits for retirees and for active employees. You have to manage that aggressively, and if you don't, you can lose money. You know, you wanna make sure you have the right people on the right plan, and people who are legally eligible to be on that plan, to be on that plan. So those audits need to take place, and this is the department that's doing that type of stuff. So I just wanted to kind of summarize it all together, just to give a bigger picture. So, thank you. There's just a lot to manage there with the group I have. Thank you, Steve.
Oh, and in addition to that, I would add that, we've never had a material misstatement in our audits or financial statements, and our
No qualification letters.
FY '23 audit is underway as we speak, and I've been dealing with the auditors today, so no issues, but it's time consuming and demanding.
And that's a testament to the work that you all do too, that the quality or the findings or lack of findings on an audit, shows all the hard work that's being done. So, a lot on your shoulders.
And I should thank you guys again, because we're late, right? The charter talks about having a budget to you 120 days prior to the start of the fiscal year. That was March 3rd, right? We're building this as we're flying it, so we appreciate it, and we're working. But thanks for bearing with us. I guess that's the main point.
Absolutely.
We're gonna start in July and August, so we'll be way ahead of ourselves for next year.
Ooh, that can
Not an excuse.
start this in just a couple
a
months.
rationale.
Well, I'm still on the hook, Tim, so we're gonna move on to the
Yeah.
undistributed if we can.
I just wanted a comfortable seat.
Similar, like, as I was talking about the finished documents of the past, I did get a chance to put together most of the undistributed expenses, which is the next part of the agenda. Finance. So undistributed expenses are everything that kind of doesn't fit any place else in the budget, but it's typically the things that aren't departmental appropriations. So included in undistributed is employee benefits and insurance, so health insurance, the OPEB appropriation, other employee benefits like life insurance, and the Medicare tax, the Worcester Regional Retirement Assessment, which is our pension plan for town employees, workers' comp insurance, and then debt service, state assessments, reserve for abatements, and I'm just listing these in order as they are in our document. I called it overlay earlier. Reserve for abatements is the same thing as overlay. And then stabilization reserve fund, which this body controls, the Appropriations Committee Reserve Fund. And I don't have the warrant articles listed here. Those are still being developed, so I didn't include them here yet, but those will be added to this document at some point soon. So going through, if you want to get started, we can go in order of these accounts. If you want to talk about health insurance.
Yeah.
At the start of this process, one thing that kind of, we came to this late, but we were also facing 10% renewals. So a 10% increase in health insurance would be, a fairly large budget item to fund. It's a $6 million budget, so 10%, $600,000. That's typically almost the entire amount that this town budget would go up in a year. So it's an immense amount. So in the end, we went through the rosters. With turnover has led this to be a very difficult exercise to budget for health insurance. We had a huge turnback last year of $900-something thousand, and that was the result of vacancies and just we budget fairly conservatively, so we don't have to come back and seek emergency appropriations or anything like that. So we typically map out very carefully when new employees are being added to provide for their benefits and the health insurance. So last year, it was kind of a fraught process because we were looking at rosters and people were coming and going. There was a lot of vacancies within the public safety departments, and so there's savings in salary, but there's also savings within the health insurance. So we budgeted for positions, but they weren't filled. So basically, for the period of time, that's why we ended up with, it's good to have a great surplus, and I'm not complaining about that, but it's not necessarily for the right reasons, because you have vacancies that are unplanned for. So again, if you look back to these numbers here on the cover sheet, these are just summarized, but you can see that in 23, the expenses actually went down, which is an unheard of occurrence. So we're budgeting $6.2 million, but expending 5.3, which is behind the 900. This year, again, we've had some vacancies. We're projecting out to have a surplus again this year, but nowhere near the $900,000 we had last year. So I'll move quickly. I'm boring people. So
No, you're not.
we ended up, we're likely going to have an 8% renewal on Harvard Pilgrims, our sole carrier. A lot of the movements we've made with health insurance are detailed in this document here. It's a very long document, but it's very good at memorializing the various steps we've taken along the way to maintain reasonable increases in health insurance. So the 8% increase, we've really looked hard at the roster. We've gotten leaner in our estimates for what we might need for unknown migration. That means people that come via, that don't have coverage now, but have a qualifying event that allows them to come on the plan later, mid-year, outside of the open enrollment period. So we've decreased that amount, so we have probably about 10 cases of people coming onto family plans for an entire year. I mean, somebody wouldn't come on for an entire year on a qualifying event, but it's closer, but we're closerly comfortable making that assumption. So in the end, the increase is 4.4%.
By just taking a closer look at the roster of personnel and understand which ones might be more eligible or less eligible that might come onto the plan. I follow the line of reasoning.
Right.
Rather than having a model that estimated.
Right. So
You've narrowed and done more detailed inspection of actual personnel and positions to understand the range.
Right, so we take our, not to bore people with the details, but what we typically do is take our roster in December, then we look at where we are with vacancies, and then we budget for those. And then we budget an additional amount on top of that for unknown changes, for the people that aren't carrying the insurance but are otherwise eligible for it. So we try to make mutually beneficial choices with employees. Like we have the opt-out program, where if somebody has been on insurance for 2 years, they have the ability to get a stipend from us if they opt out of the insurance. So the town could potentially save $20,000 while we pay somebody $4,000. So the net savings to the town is $16,000. So we try to embark on that. That's only so good if you can convince somebody to take it.
But by doing that work, or reaching out like that, it's able to save the money.
Savings, yeah. But like I said, this year, in the end, it was about 4.4% increase in this budget. We're continuing to increase our OPEB trust contribution. And like I said, the good news, it wasn't great news that we got notified that Tufts Complement was going to cancel their plan, but it is good news in our OPEB liability that it dropped to $12 million. funding percentage is now, with our current trust fund, we've got about $6 million in the trust fund now as of today. So as a comparison to our $37 million liability, it's a 16% funded percentage. So that is good news. I mean, we've only been at it since 2015, so it's, we're growing that. We're increasing. Every year we make a contribution, that funding percentage increases. All right, so that's notable. Other benefits / FICA, that's simply to provide for, if we have retirements during the course of the year, there's a sick leave buyback provision in the personnel bylaws that's provided for within that number. I mean, that's about $9,000, but the majority of this is the employer Medicare tax, the 1.45% that we pay to the federal government for employees' Medicare. And that increases just straight in line with payroll. Next is the Worcester Regional Retirement. They're on a funding plan that by legislation, they're required to be fully funded fund their liability by 2040. They're on a target to be fully funded by 2036. Our funding plan for OPEB that we work with actuaries, they're very similar types of concepts, and an actuarial evaluation is done on these benefits, and a funding calculation gets made and a funding plan gets put into place to get to funding. And once the Worcester Regional Retirement is fully funded in 2036, I think our plans are to redirect the money to the OPEB trust fund. Our demographics within the system led us to have about an 11% increase in Worcester Regional Retirement. It's actually calculated. They look at our people and make that calculation. So there's not much we can do about it. So it is what it is.
Just another 300,000 that we need to
Yes. We got some estimates from workers' comp, building liability, and those weren't that crazy. They're increases, but they're nothing off the wall. Debt service doesn't include anything new per se. It's just our declining debt schedules that we have for existing debt. There were 2 new articles that got approved for debt last year. They were, a $475,000 DPW tight tank project. That's going to move forward this spring, so we have to borrow for that this year. The fire truck that was authorized as well, it was $900,000, and that's not going to be delivered, so we can put off borrowing for it this year, so we can issue debt next year for that. So that's why you basically see that the debt service is declining. State assessments, we get that straight from, this is kind of good news, I think, that within the state assessments, we had no charter school assessments, so we have 0 students set to go to charter schools, which means our state assessments go down. And we're have a stabilization fund contribution in the budget as well. That's to maintain our bond rating and reserve percentages. So typically, as you know, we close the year, we have a certain amount of free cash. That's one element of the town's reserves. The other element is the stabilization fund. This is just moving reserves from one pocket to the other. It's moving money from the checking account to the savings account. So it has no effect on the overall reserve levels, but it does show the bond market or the credit rating agencies that we're serious about saving, because it's a higher threshold to pull money out of stabilization versus free cash. So again, the mechanics of it, we close the year, we have a certain amount of free cash, we have a stabilization fund. Typically, in relation to the budget, that number is about 12%. Our financial policies are we endeavor to maintain 5 to 10%. So we work through a free cash plan, and that free cash plan typically brings down our reserves to 8%. So we've been very consistent with that every year, and that's, again, the free cash plan for this year. And that concludes my presentation for undistributed expenses.
Back on section 1617, there's an offset item for 39,000, roughly 40,000 for public library grants. What is it?
That's a recurring item. That's called the cherry sheet offset. That's basically, it's money we're notified, it's part of our state aid money that we're notified that we're going to get, but it's dedicated to the library. So it's money that doesn't actually come into the general fund.
So it's then definitely designated for the library?
Correct, yes.
And does it reduce the amount of money that has to be raised by taxation?
Well, it's basically washed out of that calculation for taxes by it being, we get state aid, a blanket number, like
Yeah, as I recall,
$5 million.
it was
and
worth talking about years ago. When I
Right.
was a library trustee, it was so little money that it was, you could barely go out to lunch on it.
Yeah, what's called the cherry sheet offsets, it used to include school lunch money as well. So it used to be school lunch plus the library money. For whatever reason, they decided they were gonna simplify things and they took school lunch out of it, but then they didn't get rid of this, library grant mechanism, which is, it's kind of like an unnecessary accounting mechanism, but, so, again, we get the money, but it's not part of our undistributed general fund state aid that comes in. We're notified it's part of that, but then it has to get washed out here through the budget.
Okay.
But the library does get that money directly.
It's really just bookkeeping then.
It's an added accounting exercise, so.
Any other questions on that portion? Lisa?
I feel like you know, asking questions all the time. Three of them, just going into my mind, when you talked about school lunches, there was the millionaire's tax that we passed in Massachusetts. What was supposed to go for that and other things. Have you received anything, or does it come directly to you from the state, or where does that go to the schools? How does that money that we voted on, and the money they've collected, get utilized by the towns?
I don't have a great answer for you on that, Lisa. I know that the schools have gotten increased school lunch money. I believe all school lunches are free, and that was federally funded. And I think the federally funded program is being phased out, which is going to be replaced with state money, and that may be how it comes in. They file claims for the school department. They file claims with the state for their school lunches, what they've served and so forth, and they get reimbursed as they go along. That may be funded with that tax. I believe part of that amendment was to fund road work, and I think that funded our supplemental appropriation to Chapter 90 that we received. So other than those two things, I'm not really aware of how that comes to the town yet.
Okay, so you don't know what they file for, it, or it just comes?
Well, it would probably be part of another program, is what I'm saying, is that I don't know all of the facets of that program yet.
And then getting back to the school, is the addition that we made, or however you want to call that, not this last complex, but the one before, the big build out, is that at the end of its debt service? Is that like a couple of years, or?
You're talking about the addition renovation project at Algonquin? Yeah, we're getting close. It's to 2028, I think, is the last year of debt service for that. And they employed a level debt service that schedule, so it's gonna be about the same payment every year that, you know, it's based on our regional agreement, but it's gonna be about $600,000 a year for the next, I guess, 3 years.
All right, so-
Seemed like forever, not that long ago.
Seems like everything. And so last question, when you said that the $900,000 truck is on back order, I imagine. So, did they say when it's coming? Do they have any idea?
That truck, I don't believe is coming till May 25.
I guess for a year. So when they request, there's another one on there now, a $1 million truck. What happens with that? Is it because it's a specific type of truck that you wouldn't wait in the next queue, or how is that presented so that when you have another truck coming, that will come out of the budget, but it doesn't get brought online or used right now?
Well, I mean, it gets a little fraught about when we're gonna get delivery of it and you're gonna have to expend the funds. So we can't carry deficits in capital lines across fiscal years. So if we're gonna get it in a fiscal year and expend the money, we need to borrow the money in that same year. So if it's unknown when we're gonna get it, it can be very kind of stressful. If we're gonna get it in June or July, it could make a big difference. So we may have to rush to borrow if we get it in June unexpectedly. It would be great news for the fire department. They would love to have this truck tomorrow, I believe, but it's a little challenging. I don't know the lead time of the new truck. It's probably about the same. It's probably about 18 months.
Okay. And just for my interest, do we earn interest on the money that we put aside every year from the town budget? I mean, if we have money that we don't use, right, because we're waiting for them to still increase cars, whatever, does that money, because it's coming out of taxes on a regular basis, does that
Yeah.
money earn interest?
Yeah, there is a component of our local receipts that offset our the tax, what taxpayers pay. It's local receipts that come in. The combination of motor vehicle excise is our largest local receipt, but the other local receipt, one other one is investment income. So when we earn investment income on money in the bank, that's money that goes to the general fund, and it creates free cash. It offsets taxes when we can budget that at a higher rate. And yeah, we do earn interest on what's in the bank.
Tax dollars are doing really something there.
Well, it will, in theory, offset taxes by creating an alternate revenue source that pays for the town services.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
Next up would be review town meeting warrant articles. Is that what we want to talk next?
Oh, we have like the table of contents today, not detailed, because we're still working on those details. We got them all as placeholders.
Yeah, I have capital budget.
It's right under the capital budget.
Yes.
Yeah, Tim, I gave him the updated capital free cash plan from the financial planning this week.
I gotta cover that?
Well, there's warrant articles in the draft warrant that relate to it, so I just wanted to give them the update of where we were with the free cash plan and what got presented at financial planning on Tuesday.
Okay.
There are some minor revisions that happened with the school's requests, so that led to the fire truck that we were just talking about a moment ago. The debt request, if this plan is implemented, got reduced by about $200,000. Sorry, Tim, I didn't mean to
No, I
steal
thought
your
I was gonna
thunder.
talk, if you got this, you can take them through the free cash, the levy, and how you're gonna split it out, and what projects are getting funded by what, means you're on a roll.
Oh, yeah. Oh, well, I'll just continue on a little bit.
I think it is.
I will go
think it
really
is-
too fast.
I mean, especially since we're in this accelerated schedule, right? Tuesday's not financial planning, Thursday's appropriations, and, hot off the press on Tuesday. So keeping both groups aware how the adjustments or the fine tuning that's happening is appropriate.
So this document here, there should be a warrant article for almost all of these items that are on here, except for the Algonquin items, because those will be included within their budget article. If you look across, is $5.4 million, if you down this column of capital requests. And then it's broken out by funding sources. So in our free cash plan that we discussed last time, this total amount of free cash being used is the same. The other available funds and enterprise, everything's the same except for the amount that got released from the schools projects that were removed from the list, went to the Rescue 1 replacement under fire, and reduced the amount of general fund bonds, because that's kind of the last amount in this list is, whatever we don't have money for, we would have to borrow.
And then I think other changes that this committee hasn't seen is then bringing the Peasley feasibility study
Correct,
forward.
yeah.
So that would be then a new item that we didn't see on the last draft.
Correct.
Walk them through how that works with MSBA.
Yeah. I'll just briefly.
That's a good point.
It was.
Sorry.
It was.
51% is a huge thing.
Yeah. So typically, they're applying for participation in the MSBA program, and the MSBA program, the Massachusetts School Building Authority, they would reimburse the town a certain percentage, and the last time we had a reimbursement from MSBA was the Lincoln Street School, and it was about a 52% reimbursement rate. So this feasibility study, should it get voted at town meeting, it would be a borrowing authorization, and the need for it to be a borrowing authorization is usually related to MSBA's requirements, and we don't know that we're going to actually be exposed to $900,000 of expense related to the feasibility study. We'd probably be exposed to about half of it, but it's not going to be tomorrow, and it's not going to be, it's going to be after they find out whether they've gotten into the MSBA program. Probably did a better job explaining it last week.
Susan, you want to update from FinCom?
I watched the school committee meeting last night, and the school committee members asked about this particular line item that they're bringing forward, and they did say that they didn't believe that they would probably have to look for the issuance of the bond until 2026, so that might help everybody to take a deep breath. So
Yeah, I know that was mentioned, so that's
I don't know
typically.
if that's going to happen, but that's
Yeah,
what they
typically a capital project, we don't borrow it immediately overnight, if, for example, like the fire rescue truck, again, there's a long lead time for public safety equipment these days. But if it weren't for that, we would probably enter the new year and not borrow money immediately. We have money in the bank, and we have a certain amount that we can advance to ourselves, so we would advance the money to ourselves. If we don't receive the item by the end of the year, that would negate our need to borrow for it that year, and we could then advance money to ourselves again on July 1st, and wait till we actually get it and expend the money to borrow the money. So to what Susan was saying, I don't think they're applying to participate in this program, and I don't think it's going to take off and start with expenditures right away. But we still need to account for the authorization that we're
Be
going
authorized
to be
to borrow
voting.
should we need to, yeah. Awesome. Any other items then from, in terms of the warrant articles, that just continues to be the outline of how that's staging up?
Yeah, that we're filling in all the details now, and there's some details with regards to the study from CMRPC, and I talked about that earlier with Lauren, for a recommendation to merge Family Youth Services and the Board of Health under one division. From a budgetary standpoint, it's the same number. If you had two departments or one, we just simply have a better service model. But the board's having a hearing and a meeting on that on the 18th, so they'll consider that. So there's no, that's a really long technical piece of that warrant. I guess that's the point of me telling that story.
I think we all received a link to that report from CMRPC, so that's about, I don't know, Jeff, you may not have been included in distribution on that.
I can send it to
So,
you.
yeah, there might be a couple of things that we need to catch up on in terms of distribution. And while I mentioned things that were forward, we've got the links to the school budget information. That was forwarded to us, and you have that, you have that one. Okay, so that's only 140 pages and 110 pages to review, so get right on that. CMRPC was 74 pages? 79 pages, okay. Shows you I didn't get through it all, because all that. But appreciate, distributing that early, and have a chance to look at those ahead of time.
I have a question about the meeting with the selectmen. That's always been very short and sweet because we had not reached our decision on the budget by the time that came up. Is that what will happen this year too, or will they?
And it's scheduled for the 25th of March. It's my first time through. I would like it to be that way, but we plan on giving a full, if we had a normal time frame, what I would like to see happen is you to have one book with everybody's budget with a summary of every line item that I could present one night, and then if you wanted to see other members of the departments to explain more stuff with the detail, it would just make it so much more streamlined. But I'm not there, so the short answer is,
You're doing a
I just
great
don't know.
job.
It remains to be seen.
So far, so good.
All right, well, I appreciate that.
But I think, and even from a schedule, we may not be finalizing our report until April 4th. So it would be after the, as you mentioned, Janice, after the 25th meeting. But I think everything's coming together, right, and into focus. And as we proceed, we'll.
Yeah, by charter, we have to meet with the selectmen.
Yeah, it's a joint meeting for a public hearing.
Yeah.
And for all the input, the presentation and the input on it, especially before you get to town meeting, because you want to educate as many people about the process we went through and the fact that it's balanced and we're cognizant of the taxpayer having to pay the bill.
So we won't have taken our votes, our final votes and recommendations by that time, but we've gone through the process and understand where we're
Well,
at.
that was the situation we were always in.
Yeah, it seems to be.
Yeah,
That's the normal schedule.
yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
Because that, other than, so we have next,
Schools,
scheduled for our next,
schools, 14th.
our schools. And we talked briefly and a little chaotically about moving the start time last week. Do we still want to try to get a 6:30 start if the presenters can do that?
If you could, I will not be here next Thursday, just so you know. I won't be here Tuesday
If
either.
that- If we hear back from the superintendents and other representatives, if we can do a 6:30 start, that still gives you a buffer, and that's good for you, Jeff. Yes. It certainly works for the rest of us. Let's plan on that and then make sure on the agenda posting that for next week, we do a 6:30 start.
Would it also be possible to get kind of a summary, like, as we go department by department, we kind of see staffing increases. Would it be possible to get kind of a report that says, in the budget this year, here are all the staffing increases that are in the budget?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that would, I think the timing of that would be perfect for this coming week to be be able to put that together for the coming week.
Okay, great. Yeah, that would
As,
helpful to see that across the board.
as the chair said, though, through the chair, I think as things are developing, we're much closer today than we were last week, and
Yeah.
we'll be much closer to.
Is there, and so then that's what I started to look ahead. Schools next week, fire, and then any other, that would be the 21st would be if there's any other department information or other bit. Is, one question I had, is recreation significant enough to look at that specifically?
There is an adjustment with recreation for more, it can't fund on its own fees as much, so it's gonna be augmented by the general fund this year more than others.
Is that something we could look to potentially schedule for the 21st then to hear from, or does that put too much into the 21st?
Yeah, I don't think that would be a long presentation.
It should be short, but I think having the discussion, so if this is kind of like the first time in a long time that the recreation fees aren't covering the budget of the department, that would be a good discussion to have,
I'll check with her to get her in for the 21st.
if that works. If not available to present, having the information for review without, have it, if Ally can't join us, that's fine too. That's great. Okay, thank you. Let me put in that. And then I would say, so we're getting the information fast and furious. Continue with the process of, as we digest what we've had, if there's any questions, continue to funnel the questions direct to Jason.
Okay.
Then he'll collect the answers. So for example, we had a question out of the first meeting about water and sewer, potential water and sewer rate increases. So we got that initial feedback, and that was great to get like immediate feedback to just acknowledge that it was going to be checked into.
I think you sent it.
And I have more to give you more of what it might cost the average 1,000-gallon user, cubic foot user. So I have that in my office, I just haven't put it together to send it.
Yeah, so I think even that, what happened on that, even that individual question was almost immediate acknowledgement, yeah, I'll look into it.
Yeah.
Right, and then it wasn't much more than a day or two after then, okay, preliminary, it looks like 5%, 4%.
Yep.
And so that, if we continue that process, I think that's been working great to get the information to us, to get any questions we have out to staff, and just continue work. I know it's a little chaotic with the messages flying back and forth, but
It's
I
the
think
only
it
way we can
works.
do it.
Yeah, it's working, right? So that's great. So please continue to do that. I think everybody has, Jeff's on the distribution lists. I think we're caught up in terms of contact information and all that. Excellent. Anything else? That was a lot.
Not from us.
Entertain a motion to adjourn.
That would be entertaining.
May I